President, I thank the senator from the Dakotas for yielding the floor to me. And before he leaves, I want to say something about what the senator just said. In fact, I was sitting here listening to I'm going to prove that I was actually listening to his speech. I don't think we always sometimes think we don't, but I did that because he was right on target. But my thought process went back to the 1970s. When in the 1970s, OPEC and the Arab oil embargo basically held the United States of America hostage. I remember lines where you'd wait in line for an hour and a half to get $10 worth of gasoline because we had limited supply. Now we sit here in a country, some 40 years later, that has unlimited resources available to us if we'll just take the political moves, the regulatory moves, and the practical moves to exhibit our power and to extract those resources. For example, the Keystone Pipeline that you talk about. Not a single molecule of carbon will be generated by bringing that petroleum underground through a pipeline from Canada to Houston. And we'll refine it more soundly and more environmentally than the Chinese would or anybody else would. And then we'll have an almost infinite supply to take care of our own country internally and also use it as a part of our soft power around the world. The senator is absolutely correct about Germany and about the Ukraine and about Russia. If we become the surrogate and we replace Russia in terms of supplying natural gas to that part of the world, we take away the only asset Russia has. As Senator McCain has so often said, Russia has relegated itself to being a gas station with a flag. Well, if we become the competitive gas station down the line, we can lower our price by 9/10 of a cent. We can sell more gas than they can, and we can use our soft power of our natural resources to bring back what we need in terms of peace and stability in that part of the world. And the byproduct of doing it is not just energy security. It's not just better diplomatic and international policy, but it's jobs for Americans, jobs to build the pipeline, jobs to operate the pipeline, jobs to extract or frack the natural gas out of Haynesville and Marcellus. We are sitting on a ham sandwich starving to death as a country by assets because governmental policy will not let us do some of the things we ought to do. So I came to the floor to talk a little bit about job creation and bringing jobs home. The Bringing Jobs Home bill is a $214 million bill, which is a rounding error in terms of the way we do business around here, and we'll do nothing except penalize companies for doing what they have to do and offer a reward that's really not a carrot at all to bring jobs back. So I want to thank the senator from the Dakotas for his speech and for his continuing and persistent emphasis on our energy and our energy power and our energy independence. It's voices like his that need to be heard more and more in this chamber so we can really create jobs for the American people and we can solve the economic problems that we have. So I commend the senator from South Dakota. Thank you. From North Dakota.
Yes, sir.
I apologize. I'm a Southerner, so I slipped up on that.
I'd like to thank the good senator. Appreciate it very much.
Mr. President, I rise to talk for a minute about the issue of the day that's before us, the Bring Jobs Home bill. And I appreciate any effort to bring jobs home and to create new jobs at home. But I want to talk about how we're really making a false promise and giving idle hope to people about bringing jobs back because we're not doing the things we really should be doing. You know, if you ask me to make my choice, what should we do in the United States Senate, on the floor of the Senate and in this body, as legislators to create as many jobs as we can, as fast as we can in America? A tax credit for bringing jobs home won't do it, and a tax penalty for taking jobs overseas won't do it. But approving the Keystone Pipeline will do it, and giving the President of the United States Trade Promotion Authority will do it. Both of those things are pending on the floor of the Senate right now before us. We could take them up tomorrow, and if we did, we could make a massive impact on job creation in America and further empower our economy. I happen to be the ranking Republican on the Finance Committee Subcommittee on Trade. We have two major trade agreements pending in the United States of America that we're a part of current negotiations. One of them is the Trans-Pacific Partnership. One is the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership called TTIP. Those two trade agreements are free trade agreements with our biggest trading partners, Asia and Europe and Scandinavia. But the Asians and the Scandinavians both tell me when I talk to them in meetings discussing these trades, when are you going to give your president trade promotion authority? Because we know until the United States Congress gives the president that authority, you're really not serious about negotiating trade deals. I first came to the Congress of the United States in 1999, 1 year after we gave President Bill Clinton trade promotion authority. And then we had a plethora of free trade agreements that passed at that time because of the negotiation power that we gave the president. Trade promotion authority just means we give the president the authority to negotiate the trade, and then the Senate gets an up or down vote on the agreement. But we don't get a vote on amendment after amendment after amendment. We get a vote on the totality of the agreement. In other words, we give sincere interest to our foreign trading partners that what we say is what we mean, and that we're going to give our president the authority to negotiate those deals, and we'll make them subject to our ratification in the Senate. Trade Promotion Authority is important for America, for jobs, for our economy, and it's quite frankly important for bringing jobs home to the United States of America. The Keystone Pipeline, which I mentioned a minute ago in talking about Senator Hovind's remarks, the Keystone Pipeline is job creator. The unions are for it, businesses for it, most Americans are for it. It only takes the signature of the president to let it go. The State Department has signed off on it. There's only one reason, I suppose, that we're not building the Keystone Pipeline, and that's because of environmental fear of the Keystone Pipeline generating some kind of an environmental problem. Well, think about it for a second. If you don't put it in a pipe and bring it underground, you can put it on a truck that burns gasoline or diesel fuel and bring it to Texas and create a whole lot of carbon molecules. We're trying to reduce carbon in the air, so building a pipeline is environmentally friendly. It's safer than putting it on the roads or rail cars or trucks or tractors. It's the way to do it. I don't understand why the president won't do it, but I think we need to continue to talk about it because the energy independence that Mr. Senator Hovind talked about is exactly what America is on the cusp of having. Energy independence like we suffered when we were dependent in the 70s and 80s. We paid a big price for it. We paid a price of inflation, reduced authority around the world, and we lost our position and stature in business. We now have the chance to secure it not just for this decade, but for this century in the United States of America. And I hope the president will reconsider his unwillingness to sign the Keystone Pipeline and do so. Now, on the job issue and on the inversion issue, which has brought about this entire discussion, and for those that might be listening or watching, inversion is where American corporations decide to acquire a foreign country and invert to be with their headquarters being in the foreign country rather than the United States of America to take advantage of a better corporate tax rate. We are now the highest corporate tax rate in the world, highest in the world. Japan, which used to be up there above us or right with us, they now lowered theirs. Canada has lowered theirs. Ireland has lowered theirs. Jobs are going offshore because the cost of taxes is lower, because it's a tax code that promotes growth, promotes business, and promotes development. We need a pro-growth tax policy in the United States. We need a more simpler tax code. We need a fairer rate of taxation. We need to get rid of corporate welfare. A lot of my friends on the other side are always talking about corporate welfare. They're right. We did it on ethanol subsidies when we were subsidizing people to make ethanol. That was an intent through a tax incentive to cause something we thought would be the right thing to happen for the environment, which didn't work. Those are the type of things we ought to stop doing, those types of corporate welfare. But what we should do is give a pro-growth tax code to the American business people, whether they're C Corps or S Corps, and I'm going to talk about that for a second, so they know what kind of tax rate they can count on, they know it's simple, they know it's fair, and they know it is predictable for the future. You know, I find it interesting when the old Soviet Union fell, when the Soviet satellite states like Estonia and Latvia became independent countries. If you go back and study, and that wasn't too long ago, if you go back and study what they did to separate themselves from the Soviet Union, take Estonia, for example. The new president of Estonia, after they became independent, did three things. Gave the state-owned apartments to each person that rented them and let them own them as a home, and then created a housing market instantaneously. That was number one. Number two, they cut the tax rate from 50% to 25%, and revenues went up and not down because people thought 25% was a fair rate and they didn't cheat, because there was a lot of cheating going on the 50% rate. And then on the corporate tax in Estonia, they went to business. They said, we're not going to tax your profits as long as you reinvest those profits in jobs or in research and development. The rest of it will be taxed. So they incentivized research and development. They incentivized employment. They made corporate Estonia feel like they had a fair tax system. What happened? You fly into Tallinn, Estonia today, and it's like flying into Dallas or Atlanta. There are cranes everywhere. There's economic development and improvement everywhere. Why? Because they have what people perceive to be a fair code. They don't have a junk code. They have a good tax code, and they incentivize people to do business and make money. You know, you raise revenue in America by raising prosperity, not by raising rates of taxation. We prove that every time we lower the capital gains tax, because in every year following the lowering of the capital gains tax, revenues from capital gains went up and not down. Why? Because people who had a mature investment were incentivized to pay the lower tax rate, sell the investment, and reinvest it in a maturing, developing investment, rather than just hold on to it because they didn't want to pay what they consider was a confiscatory tax. Tax policy drives economic decisions. There's not a one of us in this room that doesn't make decisions every single day on our own personal financing where we don't consider in some part, in whole or in part, the tax consequence of it. That's why you have a tax code. But we ought to look at fair and equitable corporate tax relief. We ought to do it for S Corps and for C Corps. And I want to talk about that part for just a minute. C Corps are the major corporations, dividend-paying companies of America. Their tax rate is 35%. S Corps are corporations where they file as partners, and the profits of the companies flow through on what's known as a K-1 statement, and it flows through as ordinary income. Well, today, the ordinary income tax rates for people making more than $450,000 can go up to 39%. It's already higher than the 35% C Corps have, and if we lower the C Corp rate from 35 to 28 through comprehensive tax reform, then there'll be a big disparity between the S Corp and the C Corp. And the S Corps employ a lot of Americans. It's the mom and pop Main Street business. It's 72% of the jobs that are created in America. So we ought to take the whole enchilada. We ought to reform both the corporate tax rate at the C Corp rate and at the S Corp rate and the individual tax rate and modernize them together and make them fair, equitable, less complex, and more productive. If we incentivize American business to invest and to grow, we will raise revenues, we will raise prosperity, and we will raise hope. If we continue to pass bills that say, if you do something, we're going to tax you, or if you do something, we're going to give you a benefit, and think that's going to cause people to bring jobs back to the United States of America, we're dead wrong. What will cause them to bring jobs back to America is a fair tax code and take our strong investments and our strong assets like petroleum and like liquid natural gas that we were talking about and use them to our advantage through the soft power of economic power. So my message today is very simple. If you want to create jobs, build the Keystone Pipeline and give the President Trade Promotion Authority, and do it now. And if you want to really stop corporate inversions, just modernize the American tax code like every other country in the world has done. You know, there are a lot of people that talk about offshore profits that are stranded in the Cayman Islands and these secret bank accounts because they don't come back to America. We created the Cayman Islands secret bank accounts when we passed a tax code that was confiscatory in nature. When it's better off for your company and your stockholders to keep the money you make offshore, somewhere else offshore, so it's not subject to second time to taxes, it created those Cayman Islands tax havens, and we'll do it again if we don't get our tax code fixed. So my message is simple: build Keystone, explore our natural resources, give the President Trade Promotion Authority, and make a fair, equitable change in our S Corps, our C Corps, and our individual rates. Let's incentivize prosperity and hope, and not penalize and punishment Americans for doing business. And I yield the floor and yield to the Senator from Tennessee.